Angola Offshore Oil explained. Africa's deepwater powerhouse at a turning point. Africa's oil and gas sector remains a key economic driver, with Angola at the center of offshore production. Supported by deepwater reserves, the country plays a major role in regional energy output, even as broader market conditions continue to shift. Driven by offshore development and FPSO-based production, Angola's oil sector continues to shape export revenues and investment flows. Despite declining output and increasing efforts to diversify, oil remains the dominant force within the economy. This leads directly to a shift in strategic direction. Recent FPSO developments and the country's exit from OPEC signal a change in how Angola is positioning its energy sector. As a result, regional dynamics and Angola's offshore infrastructure are becoming more closely connected. The key question is how evolving assets, operators, and investment strategies will shape the country's long-term energy trajectory. Countries such as Nigeria, Angola, Algeria, Libya, and Egypt hold substantial reserves and operate across a wide range of assets, from mature onshore fields to complex offshore platforms. Offshore production has become increasingly important, particularly in West Africa, where Nigeria and Angola dominate deepwater output in partnership with international operators. At the same time, new discoveries in Senegal, Mauritania, and Namibia are attracting investment and reshaping the regional energy landscape. This shift highlights a clear contrast with onshore operations. In North and Central Africa, countries such as Algeria and Libya rely on large desert-based fields, though these are often affected by political instability, security risks, and aging infrastructure. Emerging producers, including Uganda and South Sudan, are expanding their onshore sectors with ambitions to increase exports. At the same time, natural gas is gaining strategic importance. Offshore discoveries in Mozambique and Tanzania are positioning both countries as future LNG exporters, drawing significant foreign investment and influencing regional energy dynamics. As a result, Africa's oil and gas industry combines established production centers with new growth areas, while continuing to face challenges in governance, environmental management, and local capacity. Increasing focus on the energy transition is also shaping how future resource development is balanced with investment in renewable energy. Angola's oil industry remains a cornerstone of its economy, driven by offshore production and a strong dependence on crude exports. Despite ongoing reform efforts, the sector continues to shape national revenues and overall economic stability. Production has declined over time, falling to around 1.13 million barrels per day in 2023 from a peak of 1.93 million barrels per day in 2010. Proven reserves are estimated at 2.6 billion barrels of crude oil, along with approximately 4.6 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, sustaining Angola's position as a key producer. As a result, the sector dominates the economy. Oil accounts for roughly 50% of GDP and more than 90% of export revenues, with exports generating nearly $40 billion in 2022. This level of dependence exposes the country to price volatility, as seen in revenue declines during weaker market conditions. This leads directly to structural imbalances. Despite its economic weight, the oil sector employs only a small share of the workforce, while unemployment remains high, particularly among younger populations. Recent policy shifts also point to a change in direction. Angola's exit from OPEC in 2024 reflects a move toward greater control over its production strategy, while modest growth is projected in the near term. During this period, diversification efforts are becoming increasingly important. Investment is being directed toward sectors such as agriculture and manufacturing, supported by regulatory reforms aimed at reducing reliance on oil. Angola's outlook now depends on how these pressures are managed. High public debt, exposure to price fluctuations, and infrastructure gaps remain key constraints, while ongoing reforms aim to create a more resilient and balanced economic model. Angola's offshore oil industry is built around a network of international operators, advanced FPSO systems, and extensive subsea infrastructure. This structure underpins production across multiple deepwater blocks and remains central to the country's overall energy output. Key operators drive development across these assets. Total Energies manages major projects such as Block 17, where the Girassol FPSO operates alongside a consortium of international partners, and Block 32, where the Kaombo Norte and Kaombo Sal FPSOs each produce around 125,000 barrels per day. Azul Energy operates the Agogo field in Block 15/06 through the Ngoma FPSO, while ExxonMobil leads the Kaombo development in Block 15 with multiple long-standing FPSO units. This concentration defines Angola's offshore geography. The main production zones lie along the Atlantic coast, particularly in deepwater blocks such as 15, 17, 18, 31, and 32, with additional activity in Block 15/06 and the Kwanza Basin further south. These regions host a dense network of FPSOs and supporting subsea systems. New projects are continuing to extend capacity. The Agogo FPSO in Block 15/06 is expected to add around 120,000 barrels per day, while the Kaminho development in the Kwanza Basin targets production of 70,000 barrels per day using an all-electric FPSO design. The Kamia Golfinho project is also progressing, with plans for a 100,000 barrels per day facility. As a result, Angola's offshore oil industry continues to evolve through FPSO-led expansion. These developments reflect a strategy focused on sustaining output and modernizing infrastructure, reinforcing the role of offshore production in the country's long-term energy outlook. Angola remains a central player in Africa's oil and gas sector, with offshore developments continuing to shape its production outlook. Despite growing efforts to diversify the economy, the country still relies heavily on crude exports. As offshore activity expands, managing environmental, health, and safety risks becomes increasingly critical. Effective mitigation depends on real-time data analysis, risk modeling, and contingency planning to address operational hazards and extreme weather conditions. This also brings security concerns into focus. Oil infrastructure faces rising threats, including piracy and cyber risks, requiring integrated surveillance and coordinated maritime protection. As a result, maintaining stable offshore production depends on both strong risk control and security readiness, ensuring the safety of personnel and the resilience of critical infrastructure.